My name is John Dillard, and I was a resident artist in Yash in 2019. And then I came and I worked with Ioana and the students and some of her colleagues. Um, so let me see if I can share my screen.
Yeah, there is an option on the right side. Yeah, exactly.
Like this? Can you
Yes.
see it?
Yeah, we are seeing your desktop.
Okay, great.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, so let me see here. If it goes out at all, I might just turn my video off.
Okay, yeah, we can see very clearly now.
Okay, so yeah, then and now, a lifetime in 2 years. It has been 2 years since I was there, which in the 2 years has felt like an absolute lifetime. That the picture of me on the right is kind of how I was the whole time. I was actually very underdressed for the winter in Yash. I remember you want to have some very serious concerns about the amount of clothing that I was wearing, and I didn't even have like appropriate shoes. I found this really funny picture of these pants that I bought there that I was really obsessed with. So I thought that was really funny. But yeah, I remember being very, very cold. I'm originally from the southern United States, from Florida, which is the part of the world that I come from is declared like a subtropical climate. So I had no idea how to wear layers. And I feel like also that year, Yuana, it was like there was a blizzard, and I had never seen a blizzard before in my entire life. So I think one of the interesting things and one of the best things about me for that residency was I had come right out of university, and several months later come to Yash to, that for me was really the beginning and the start of my independent practice outside of the academy. And I'm actually really glad I took a lot of really great documentation. And I remember this is like I kind of showed up, and this is how everything was.
Yeah, it was a very hard winter in that year. Usually, I don't know, in the past few years, we didn't have such a snowy winter. I don't know, but that year, I think you had bad luck. I'm sorry for that. It was
No, it
difficult.
was actually a really great experience. And I think, kind of that situation, and I think the important thing when you leave university and you start working as an artist on your own is there are so many more, obstacles that you kind of have to deal with and negotiate as you kind of like evolve in your practice and continue to make your work. And I mean, because it was so cold and it was so foreign for a lot of the period while I was there, I actually felt like really, really lonely. And I was going through this picture, and it was like, it was so cold. I remember I spent so much of my time like trying to hide away in my room, and like, I really couldn't understand anyone, and it was like really hard to get around. I like got a ticket riding the tram one time because I didn't like put my ticket in the thing. And then so I started really to try and spend the months that I was there, like figuring out how it is that you can approach a space like that, something that's like, it's difficult, it's foreign, but I think that those challenges are really, really important to have. Some of the video piece that you saw, this is actually the beginning of me working on it, and this is outside of the prophy by the university, and that's where I would go and buy all of my food. And then so this is kind of the beginning of where the jump video piece comes from, because I was talking to a friend and a collaborator of mine and telling her what a hard time I was having, getting in and feeling involved and connected to the place. And she was like, well, you can do this practice where it's if you jump up and down 50 times in a row in one place, it's like a mindfulness exercise. And, you know, I felt like the whole time I was really kind of like searching for something in this kind of way. So like in the jump piece, I went several different locations like this. The lime, you know, the statue by the place where I lived. And I was really looking for that kind of like connection. So I was making these photographic works, and for a while, I really thought that it was like, I was looking for some kind of light and some kind of resemblance of myself inside a place that was, you know, really difficult for me to integrate. And, you know, I think that experience shaped me a lot as like a really early artist in my practice, because I think you can find yourself in anything and in anywhere. So I spent a lot of my time trying to be out in the city and photographing and trying to be present. And then so this is a screenshot from the final jump piece, all of these different locations that I went to, and I was trying to develop some sense of self. And I think that's really hard when you're coming out as a young artist, because you have so many external influences coming in from your peers and from your mentors that, you know, at the time I didn't realize what a big experience it was to be an artist by yourself, and to be alone in a sense, and being uncomfortable being alone. And then those ideas all kind of rolled together into this performance. And I think this performance was really the central piece. And it's been a central work for me for a long time, because I think, you know, the past 5 minutes I've spent talking about how alone I felt and how difficult it was for me to try and integrate into a group. But on the reverse side of that, when I was able to adjust and fit in, I found my time with the students and with the faculty and inside of the residency to be one of the most welcoming and enjoyable experiences that I've ever had, in a way that, you know, it was very accommodating, and everyone's interest was very genuine. So I started to think about how, you know, my work with everyone else really influenced my time there. And you know, one of even the funny things is that to build that table that I'm on the inside of, someone had to translate what I wanted to the school's carpenter, because the carpenter didn't really speak English. And then also I had no we don't use the metric system in the United States. So not only did I not know like the mathematical language of this thing that I needed built, but I had no idea, like, you know, how to communicate what I wanted. So there was this constant evolving situation around the translation. And so that's when I, you know, came up with this piece titled Translation, which is about the passing and the sharing of information through a group of people into another person. And I think everyone in the residency worked really hard to help me understand what it was like to be in Yash and to live and to work there. And, you know, even the man I was staying with, he had to give me a pair of boots. And the boots were maybe like one size too small, and I had to squeeze my feet in the boot because I had no snowshoes. Like, I had never even owned a pair of snowshoes before. So there were so many ways that I had been totally inept in what I was doing, but through collaboration, creativity-wise and otherwise, you know, we were able to build this really beautiful performance. And I think for young artists and for students, it's really hard to see possibilities through obstacles. But I think my residency in Yash taught me that sometimes obstacles and difficulties can create such a narrow situation for an artist to exist in that the work becomes more exciting and more fulfilling. And, I think a lot about conversations that Ioana and I had when I was there. And, people were like, well, sorry, we don't have a lot. Like, it's not we don't have a whole bunch of like things and tools and equipment. And, this experience taught me that none of those things matter. That when you make work, you can make work out of anything and in any situation. And I think that has defined a big part of my practice as an artist. It's because you can really be an artist in any situation, with any kind of thing, as long as you can feel that like sense of creativity within yourself and act upon it. And then when you can get a group of people together who feel that same sense of creativity, there's so much that you can make happen. And then so that's how this performance, really developed. Kind of myself as an object of intuition that receives information from other people. And, the soup that they're feeding me is like an information that like there's so much of it is lost and spilt on the floor. But, it doesn't really matter how much I'm getting. It was the act of trying and working together that was really important to me. And then after this, I actually went back and moved back to Brooklyn, where I live now. This is kind of a map. Brooklyn is actually the largest borough in the New York City 5 boroughs. But I live in this place. I'm like pointing at the screen like you can see me, but right where it says Herbert Von King, that's basically where I live now. I live a couple blocks from the park. And that was a picture of me in like an illegal nightclub in like 2019 when nightclubs were still open. That club is actually closed now. Really unfortunate. And then, I kind of, I made this image like a long time ago, but this was kind of like my, like in a year, like I moved back to New York. I really didn't have a job. And I mean, my first job coming back was I was cleaning apartments. So I essentially worked as a maid for 2 years. And I kind of still partially am. And, all of these kind of different things coming together. And I was like doing fabrication work here and there. And, actually, that was a really tough year for me kind of in general, but a lot developed. And following my residency, the next thing that I did was I would actually go and do an exhibition in Antwerp. And I probably worked maybe 6 to 9 months on some of the work and some of the things. The exhibition took place in actually March of last year, Transmission Inside Out, with a good friend of mine and a collaborator, Manuela Villanova. She's originally from Uruguay, but was based in Antwerp at the time. So I went and I kind of brought all of this work from New York to Belgium. Like this piece and several other pieces I actually brought like in suitcases. And I didn't really bring any clothes or anything else. I filled all of my bags with sculptures to bring. And, there was a big part of the exhibition that was thinking, again, about that sense of place, obstacles. And there's always kind of like, when you're an artist working in a foreign place, there's always kind of a multicultural layer to your exhibition or to your work. And, I think especially after being in Yash, I think about, kind of what is my place as a foreigner, to speak of ideas. And then so kind of ideas that rolled over from my performance was like ideas on how to reappear and ideas on how to disappear. And these two sculptures were really important because Manuela and I were talking a lot about water as a material and water as a metaphor for the universal and kind of it's on a permanent continuum of being recycled in the most natural way. So the piece on the left is a constructed plexiglass box with a boiling pot of water on a timer. So the water will get really hot and start to boil and steam and rise through the top. And then ideas on how to disappear, the sculpture on the left is actually a casting made of ice. So in my studio, I had developed a rubber mold technique where I could basically fill the molds with water little by little and create an ice form. And then so the video, let's see if we can get like a little bit of kind of maybe like skip around a little bit. And then so maybe this is kind of like a better idea of what the exhibition looks like. It kind of took place from day until night. And that's a piece by Manuela. Yeah, and there's one piece that kind of acts as a chandelier. That's a glass piece. So all of these pieces are kind of communicating with each other through the light and through the atmosphere. And, you know, the funny thing about that is the day that that exhibition was set to open, the Belgian government came down and closed all public buildings. And the exhibition space was actually within inside of a school, and all of the schools in Belgium are essentially owned by the government. So I had this big bag full of ice sculptures that we had like biked across the city, and then we showed up and they were like, okay, you can have your exhibition open for 2 hours. Only people from the university can come, and then the building is closing at 10 p.m. Anything that you don't take will be inside for 5 to 6 weeks. So I basically took whatever I could. We got a little bit of documentation, not very good documentation. Basically all of the work was lost. I mean, it was like thousands of dollars in fabrication, in glass blowing, in construction, in flights. And I came back to the city, and I came back and I talked to my roommate, and she said, yeah, there's no toilet paper. And I mean, I swear to God, there literally was no toilet paper. And it was really early on in the outbreak, so we kind of didn't know what was going on. We were wearing gloves, but not masks. And I came back, and it was like after my show was shut down, I really lost a lot of my momentum, and that was really hard for me because I had worked months on like kind of getting that exhibition together. And one of the things you want to ask me to talk about was how my practice kind of evolved through the pandemic. And again, I think that, as artists, we're always going to be kind of operating never inside of a perfect system where we have funding, where everything is going well. And so this was actually the first piece that I ever made in quarantine for a video show that was online and then in Brussels for a curator I met in Antwerp. And it's basically just a pot of water, a video of a pot of water that boils until it's totally gone. So I'm still kind of riffing off of that idea of the transformation of water as a material. And it's called Ideas on How to Totally Eviscerate Yourself. So during this time, I was still dealing with those ideas of like, kind of like sometimes you're like, oh, I want to make myself go away. And to be honest, I think a lot of people, saw this time inside as like, time to be creative or develop some kind of ideas, but I did not feel that way. It was just not a time I found it appropriate to be creative. It was a very bleak time here in New York. New York was one of the hardest places hit inside of the United States because we're so metropolitan and such a high dense city. And I think it took me months, literal months, to actually get back to work. And this is kind of what my studio looks like. I've had a studio in Brooklyn, in Bedford-Stuyvesant, about 20 minutes away from my house that I share with my roommate. And sometimes this is what it looks like. I don't think I was making really great work, but it took me about 6 months to be able to get back to making something. And I was making these kinds of plaster molds, these big plaster molds in my studio. And the first one was actually a huge mess. It was a little bit more contained after this, but I would develop these, these molds of these kind of flat objects. This is one of a t-shirt this mold was for. And then I would actually cast them in silicone caulk, which is like the stuff that you use to like seal a bathtub in a bathroom, or like tiles. So it's like an industrial product. And the best work that I made, and maybe the only thing that I really felt comfortable with making in that period, was this piece. And so this is a cast silicone broom. And I'm trying to remember what I was thinking about as the title. Oh, if I could destroy myself to save myself. And I think there were a lot of ideas that I was having about, all of the people that had lost their lives in the event of the last year, and thinking about like, what if this had happened to me. And I was really fixated on this idea, if I had died, my roommate was going to have to go in and she was going to have to clean my room. And I was really obsessed with trying to have my room clean, because I was thinking like, okay, if anything ever happens to me, like at least I want my room to be clean. So when people go in and take all the stuff out, it will be presentable. So, I was kind of dealing and developing those ideas. And I think that this sculpture probably took me 2 months. So, I think as artists, we always have this huge struggle with productivity and getting things done and feeling that we're moving forward. And the further and further I got from March 2020, I started to think, that really doesn't matter. I don't have to keep track of what it is that I'm doing, and I can move as fast or as slow as I want. And then about a year later, we moved into a new studio. And then, so this is my studio now. The great thing about it is that it actually has natural light. I moved into this new studio, and I found all of these old glass pieces that I had made from previously, maybe like 2 years ago. And I was like, well, should I throw them out? No. And then so I decided, well, you know what, there's a space that I work out of called Urban Glass in Brooklyn, which is like a community glass studio. And I was like, well, I'm going to take them and I'm going to put them in the kiln, and you can heat them up and fuse them together into a solid piece, which is, the piece on the left is all of the individual pieces, and then the piece on the right is them coming out of the kiln, and they're actually all fused together. So in March 2021 of this year was actually the time that I had ever felt motivated again. So, I'm kind of looking at this point where it basically took me 2 years 1 year from that exhibition, 1 whole year to recover creatively, and have the mental space and the clarity. And then, so this is kind of an idea of how I'm working on my sculptures now, where I kind of like have an idea, and then step 2 is I start to build like a paper template to kind of get the idea of the shape and the size. And then step 3 is I'm making all of these glass pieces, and then testing them and putting them together, fusing them in the kiln. And then step 4 is working on the bigger piece, trying to figure out the right kind of combination of all the pieces and how I want it to look. And, it was actually based off of, the image on the left is from Hildegard of Benin. And Hildegard of Benin was an 18th century saint in the Rhine of Germany. And she was actually considered the patron saint of creativity. And for a long time, when I was going through that big creative block and creative struggle, I would actually sometimes, find myself that I would like pray to Hildegard for deliverance. I felt like I was in a storm. And like, if I was ever going to come out of the storm, I had no idea. And, I kind of returned to the text, and even from a non-religious perspective, she discusses creativity as a connective force. And creativity is is basically, she describes as a gift from divinity or as a gift from God that interconnects all life, and especially in terms of humanity. And we were given the skill and the ability to be creative, to demonstrate free will and our agency on Earth. And then, kind of even thinking back to that performance in Yash, I still feel so many of those ideas are present because, together through creativity, we demonstrated our collective power as artists to overcome things, and to be present and to realize possibility as people. And I think that's so important, even especially in the past year when being together is really dangerous, but realizing that, especially for artists, our greatest strength is in our community and, is in the friendships. And, I even think about the friendships that I've developed with the people in Yash, and those friendships and those opportunities like this one still motivate me to continue to practice and continue to make my work. Even though I went through a time in a year period where all of the work I think I made was really bad, and it wasn't good. But I think one of the things that's taught me is that, like, to be an artist, like, you don't really need things. Like, you can make work essentially in your imagination. And if your imagination is still active and, like, you might not even be physically practicing or, doing exactly what it is, but if that switch in your mind is still on and still going, that's what making work is all about. And then so I developed all of those ideas into this kind of bigger interconnected glass sculpture where all of these pieces kind of come together. And then so this is, the start of a new body of work that I'm working on, and I'm actually really excited about. And, so I kind of have to, so this is an image of it in the kiln, and I kind of have to make all of the pieces and then put the pieces in the kiln and fuse them together. The piece isn't done yet. This was actually the first fusing, and now it has to go back and be in the kiln for more days. But yeah, that's essentially where I'm at now, and all of the, all of the stages that I've gone through since my residency, and especially, concerning how things have gone in the last year. And that's kind of it. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much for sharing all this information. It's really interesting your development. After leaving the residency, I like very much this coherent presentation of what you've done in our residency program, and then the chronological, I like the way that you included, chronologically speaking, the images with yourself after leaving the residency and coming back to your country and continuing your projects in your hometown, let's say. And thank you so much for all your effort and for your time. And to be honest, I found very interesting those object that you made, the branch, no, not the branch, sorry, I forgot the word in English. There was that, the broom, sorry, the broom.
Yeah, the broom.
Yeah, and the t-shirt. I find interesting that you wanted to express, kind of meditation, open death through such a common thing, because sometimes you look at some stuff that are very common and you use them in your daily life, but it's interesting that you can borrow some meanings, some special meanings to these usual objects, so you can go beyond the daily meaning or of an object by thinking about some other meaningful experience that, I don't know, have importance to you and express them through daily objects. I like this connections, between usual things and maybe a little more unusual thing. Because anyway, death it's an experience that I think everybody is interested in, but in the same time, it's not a very, I don't know, usual topic to talk about, and it requires, I don't know, a little more meditation upon it. It's not a very easy topic, so I like this project. Regarding the T-shirt, I didn't understand very well what you wanted to express by doing it. Maybe can you please give me more details? There is that sculpture with the T-shirt.
With the T-shirt?
Yeah. Yeah, this one. I didn't understand very well what you wanted to express through it. Was a specific idea that you wanted to share, or?
So, it was funny because this piece kind of developed in the same line of inquiry as the broom, because it had actually started with first it was a mold and a casting of a sock, and then I was casting all of these socks, and then I was casting pairs of my underwear and my T-shirt, and because I was constantly thinking about, in the same way about the broom and the same act of, because I really think that cleaning is also a form of meditation, especially after cleaning apartments in New York for those couple of years, is that I was constantly going in and picking up all my clothes off of the floor. So that was kind of my, I think I was digesting and then kind of remaking that situation in the shirt sculpture, and and in a way the shirt and all of the other silicone clothes pieces for me was almost like a sign that I existed or that I had been there, and something that I wore and that was physically on my body came onto the floor. It's like a sort of trail or a marker that I was alive. So it was kind of, and there's laundry and there's cleaning, and you're doing all of these things for yourself. And then so kind of that's how that piece evolved alongside the broom.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. Regarding the residency in Antwerp, yeah, it's really sad that you couldn't exhibit. Anyway, you exhibit, but not in normal conditions. But yeah, your project was also interesting with water, with the idea of disappearance and reappearance, because I think it's also kind of meditation, open life and death, and open this crossing from life to death, and maybe crossing again from death to life. Maybe, I don't know, reincarnation could be a kind of interpretation, of personal interpretation, for me at least. And yeah, I like this idea of project, and because it's an eternal truth, I guess, which can be expressed in so many ways. This appearance and disappearance and reappearance can be, I don't know, I think this idea makes part from our life. And it's something undeniable, I guess.
Yeah, I think the same thing, that I find in the cleaning is that it's it's essentially a constant cycle. So, in a way, when you clean something, you clean up after yourself, and then to live is to make dirty, and, to continue to live is to clean, and you're kind of in this constant cycle of moving back and moving forward and moving back and moving forward, and like picking your dust up and then creating more dust, from your body. And I think that kind of like cyclical nature and that evolution of things.
Yeah, it's like a dynamics of life and death, maybe, or I don't know. It's like a rhythm, yeah, and which takes part from our lives, I guess, from our existence, maybe identity. Yes, it's water. It's also such a common element, but you can find a lot of interesting characteristics of it, and I don't know, be creative only by using water. This is something also interesting, like those objects that you used, like the broom and the t-shirt. They are very common objects, but you tried to, I don't know, highlight some specific characteristics by, I don't know, discovering some new meanings that such common objects can have, and create a form of meditations. This is how I understand, your projects.
Yeah, and I think
yeah.
one thing for me that has always kind of been at the core of my practice, and I've worked, through a lot of different mediums, from performance to sculpture to glass, is that I've always been really interested in the element of transformation. And I think, especially as artists and especially as a sculptor, we're dealing primarily in the transformation of an internal thought and then an internal dialogue and making that external. So, I think in the same way in the performance that there's a breakdown, there's a loss in translation there. And through that transformation, things are lost and things are gained. And especially for the broom and that work, I feel like it's really important to have an accessibility point for your audience. And, I think I create things with a certain kind of idea, but every single person is going to have, a different memory of a broom, and they're going to access that sculpture in an entirely different way than maybe I had intended it to be done. But I think that that's the exciting thing about making work, is that things are constantly changing and transforming.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, I'm also noticing another connection between ice, between water, let's say, and the transparency of glass. I'm referring to your last project with those irregular forms from glass. I like this idea of transparency in general. So I don't know, I was making just now this connection between water and glass. Yeah, it's although I think it doesn't have any connection, but I don't know, it's just a personal thought.
No, it's funny that you say that, because that's actually for me a really important part of it. And when I'm making that piece, I make all of the individual components out of hot glass. So constantly the material is moving from like a liquid form into a solid form, back into a liquid form, it's heated back up, and it's constantly changing and evolving. And I think what's exciting for me about that work is that that transformation is fixed in a singular object. So that those, all those little pieces are kind of like a singular moment in time. And then all of those singular moments are combined back together through another process. And all of those moments are fixed and trapped into a singular structure. And I think, the ice and the steam are in the same way, evolving and moving. But the ice will always eventually melt and go away. It's not fixed, it's not permanent. But the thing that's exciting for me about the glass piece is it kind of has those qualities of being on a continuum, because glass is also one of the world's only really recyclable materials, unlike metal or plastic. You can recycle glass over and over and over again, and it will essentially never break down, and it is the longest lasting material on Earth. So, all of the things that are glass will exist way beyond the expectancy of human life in the long term, like hundreds of thousands, millions of years. So, going from something that's totally impermanent to something that's fixed and permanent, but still has a similar quality is what kind of moved me back into those new sculptures.
Yeah, and another characteristic of glass is that it's very fragile, like the ice. So, yeah, so you must, I don't know, handle very careful with glass. It seems to be very solid, very hard, but in the same time, it's very fragile. So that's why I think it's very hard to work with glass. But it's nice. I think it requires a lot of experience. But I remember it in the past, before coming in, taking part to our residency, I saw on your website that you had some sculptures made from glass, and I like that I don't know, those sculptures, because it seem to be very sensitive. So it's not the first time we are working with glass, and I like it. I like your projects.
Yeah, thank you. So do any of the students have any questions or anything that they'd like to ask? Or
Yes.
else?
I was about to ask them if they have any questions regarding your projects. They are free to ask you.
It's okay if I start.
Laura, we can't hear you very well.
Do you hear me now?
Yes, it's better now.
So I saw lately there are some problems in America. I was wondering, how are those affecting you besides the pandemic?
So actually, besides the pandemic, last year we went through an entire wave of protests concerning the issue of policing in America, the murder of people of color and things like that. And it's kind of like when it rains, it pours, and it's all coming down. And I think it's both a really exciting time, and we're seeing a lot of really amazing progressive change. And I won't say that things haven't been really hard, but I think one of the worst things is to deny yourself that things were hard, and that things were difficult, but we've gained so much from it. And I feel that we've really made a lot of progress, like in our election and in our policy. It will be very hard to change on a greater structure. But in the past year, I think we've had to go through a really intense and dark time as a nation. But now I think we're living in a time where a sense of optimism is coming. And it's like, I think life in practice is like a waveform. And it's going to have rises, and it's going to have dips, and it's going to have rises. And you have to ride that. And I think that every single artist in history has had to do the same thing. So I think it's both concerning and motivating. And I think as artists, we serve as a historical record to record the issues and the problems and the successes of our time. And difficult times should never stop us.
Thank you so much for your answer.
What about the openings there? For example, here in Iași, openings are not allowed, of art exhibitions are not allowed inside anymore, indoors, only outdoors. And also have been canceled a lot of art events. I guess it's the same thing there, right? It's the same situation.
Yeah. Yeah, we are really in the same situation.
S-a întâmplat ceva?
You came back. Great.
Ok.
Sorry, we lost you, John. I don't know if you said something. Okay, so everything is fine. Do you hear us? Can you hear us, John?
Okay.
Ah,
I can hear
yeah.
you now.
Yeah, we hear you. Okay.
There we go. That's so much better. So yeah, exhibitions are closed for the most part, or they're by appointment. We're starting to open up a little bit more as time goes on, but just like the rest of the world, we've been pretty stopped. And things are coming back now, and things are moving along in New York, but partially open.
Yeah, like here. So everything is almost frozen. It's a very, I don't know, weird situation. It's a surrealistic one, kind of. Okay. Does any one of you have another question for John? I don't know, for those who joined this meeting. Dacă mai aveți întrebări pentru John, pot să vă ajut, eventual să vă traduc în limba engleză. Da?
În primul rând, îi mulțumim frumos pentru prezentare și, în al doilea rând, am dorit să colaborăm în continuare. Și nu știu dacă ai spus ceva despre revistă.
Acum vreau să...
Da, să-l invităm să participe cu un articol la revista noastră, eventual despre proiectele personale.
Da.
Și prezentarea asta care a făcut-o acum, dacă poate să o prezinte și în scris, este perfect.
Ok. Okay, my colleague Zamfira Burzu wants to thank you again for your time and for your presentation, for sharing all this information. And she says that we are all very interested in collaborating with you further, if you agree. We want to have a magazine, an art magazine. We have founded recently an art center within our painting department. So we want to establish a kind of magazine in which to include some articles in English, of course, about contemporary art. And she was thinking maybe if you have some information, some written information about your projects, for example, a kind of text of article, if you could send a few pages about your work so that we can publish in our magazine would be great. I don't know, next month, if you want, in May, if you are able to send a few pages on my email address, because we are trying to gather, I don't know, about 10 articles for our magazine, and at the end of this year or at the beginning of next year, we want to publish the first number of our magazine. So that's why I was thinking to propose you, if you agree.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to.
Great. Maybe you have already written something and you don't have to write something especially for us. You can send, I don't know, a short essay. But anyway, we can keep in touch on email. So good. So if anyone has other questions for John, you can ask him. Seems that people are shy, and I don't know what happened, but
Yeah, and if no one wants to turn their microphone and speak out, you can just ask a question in the chat, and we can answer it from there. You know, if you have any questions about how the work was made, or you know, about being in practice or anything like that, I'm happy to answer. But if not, we're all free to go on our way. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, please ask.
Deci dacă mai aveți întrebări pentru John, puteți mi le adresați mie și eu le pot traduce în engleză, nu știu, despre proiectele lui, dacă aveți vreo curiozitate sau... Habar n-am. Da.
Can I ask how you started working with glass and how it made you feel at the start?
So I actually started working in glass in 2016. So there's a place called Pilchuck Glass School. And, you know, I think it's really interesting. And it's like a summer school. It's been closed the last 2 years because of the pandemic, but I went and I took a 2-week workshop once. And then, you know, in university, I never studied glass. I only ever studied sculpture. So I just kind of developed around like seeking out other sculptors who I knew worked in glass and working with them, taking a class whenever I could. And then a lot of it has just been really figuring it out on my own. And I think, you know, if anyone is interested in glass, like, you know, feel free to contact me. Because the same school where I went and took a class on scholarship also has a scholarship for all countries of Eastern Europe, like Romania, Bulgaria, Ukraine. And, you know, there's a lot of different forms that you can do. And it's really similar to ceramics. And I think if anyone was really ever interested in glass, I'd be happy to tell you more about how to get started. But I think my number one is that kind of sculpture, as long as you're not afraid of it, then you can do anything with it. So that's kind of how I got started working in glass.
It's nice and difficult in the same time. It's another technique. And I guess at our department now, I think I didn't see the students from sculpture working with glass. So you need special conditions, special space, I guess. It's not very easy to, yeah, work with this material.
Yeah, well, it's funny because there's a lot of different ways that you can do it, and it's like even if you were really interested in, you know, in glass as a material, there's a lot you can do with like cutting plate glass for windows. You know, you can learn how to cut it and glue it together. And then there's also a lot of work that you can do just in a ceramic kiln. So, you know, if you can, you know, heat the ceramic kiln upright, you can melt glass in a ceramic kiln. and pour it in molds, you know, give it different kinds of shape.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I think a lot of people are really turned off by accessibility and skill level, but really my skill level is actually really low. And for the last, you know, couple of years, like I really didn't have consistent access to a studio like that or know how to do it. So I'd say, you know, if you were ever thinking about it, go for it.
Thank you for encouraging us. Good. So, does anyone have any other question? Any curiosity? I don't know.
I'm sorry.
Please.
How hard would it be to combine glass with unusual materials or textures, like in the process?
You know, it's really not difficult at all. It's just you have to be really willing to experiment in the process. And I think, you know, with a lot of sculpture, and especially in glass, there's a lot of probability for failure. So, you know, like that last piece that I showed you, I put that in the kiln and it immediately broke apart. It's in like 6 different pieces. But you know, I know girls who are smashing up beer bottles, melting them in a ceramic kiln, and it's like, you know, if there's enough trial and error, you can really figure it out. Um, so you can do, and it's like, you know, if you smash up bottles and then try and remelt all those bottles over rocks or something, or over broken chunks of plaster, like you can get something really, really exciting. And I know a lot of people who make their work like that. Or, you know, they make like, I knew a girl who she was living in Philadelphia and she would go early in the morning and collect all of the broken glass from smashed windshields and car windows. And she spent 2 months collecting all of this broken car glass and then putting it in a kiln and fusing it back together. So I think if you're willing to experiment and push it, there's so many things that you can do. And especially if you have a person who works with ceramics and they know how to operate a ceramics kiln and what things are safe to put in a kiln. Yeah, it's really possible. And I've done stuff where I was collecting dust for a long time, and then I would mix piles of dust into the glass and fuse all of that dust into the glass. So I think, you know, the possibilities are about just as endless as you want them to be. And, you know, it might take you a couple of times to get it right and to figure out what you exactly want. But I think, you know, if making art was easy, everybody would do it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you see yourself working with other materials, like new materials that you haven't tried?
Yeah, you know, actually, my practice has always been pretty wide, from like photography to video to sculpture. The only thing that I've never really worked with is like resins or like jewelries. But I think for me as an artist, that, you know, materials come to me at certain times and at certain places. So, you know, when I was in Yash, you know, I'm not a performance artist by any means, but a performance and that kind of public sculpture was the most appropriate material to use at that time. And I think as times and situations evolve, you should be really open. Because I think, and especially when I was in university, there was like this big stigma that like, you know, I couldn't draw and I couldn't paint. I could only make sculptures because that made me, you know, I was kind of confined to this like 3-dimensional material practice. But, you know, I think as I got a little bit older, I basically was like, you know, fuck that. You know, you can do whatever you want. Like there are no rules. And like as practitioners and as contemporary artists, we make our own rules now. So I think that for me, I would use any material at any time if it was appropriate for the situation.
I like
Great.
the way you think. Yeah.
And can I have one more question?
Yeah.
What advice do you have for younger artists who try to go in this marketplace, or I may phrase it wrong, but I don't know the word, in this art scene, or artists looking at American marketplace or art scene? For example, for us, it's a very different world. What advice do you have?
Yeah, when I was getting ready to give this talk, I kind of thought like, what do I have to say to a group of, people who, you live in an entirely different economy. And I did for a long time. And even when I moved to New York City, that was one of the things that was really shocking to me. There's like so much big money and so many big galleries. And you see all of these artists who have really big shows and who they make money from their practice. And I'm going to be honest with you now, like, I really don't make any money still from my practice. Like, I don't really sell a lot of work. Actually, I'm usually in debt for a lot of the work that I do. And I think for me, one of the things that I've realized is that, like, I don't make art to be famous, and I don't really make art to make money. I, am in practice because I don't think that I could see myself doing anything else. And, I kind of in the last year have gone through a phase where, like, there are a lot of people who sell art because they make art to sell. And is that good art? Maybe not. Is it popular? Probably. But popularity is not always relevancy. And I think that, if you have true vision and you work really hard, someday someone will come for that vision. It might be in 5 years, it might be next month. You never know. But I think for me, one of the things that I've had to do, I've had to put aside thinking like, how am I going to sell this? How am I going to make money off of this? Because, like that performance, like I can't sell that performance. I can never do that performance again. But I don't think that that's what mattered, because what mattered to me was, the friends that I made and the connections that I had. And for me, like, that's why I make work, and that's who I make work for. And I think for young artists, like, always keep practicing and always move forward. And there will be hard times and there will be good times. And, there have been really good times where I've sold a lot of work and I've been making really good money and I've gotten a lot of opportunities. And then there are times that I'm making no money and I get no opportunities. But like, if you don't turn that switch off and if you keep going and you keep motivated, that's what's going to keep your practice alive. And that's what's going to move forward. So my advice is really never stop. You can take a break, but never stop.
That is great. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Yeah, it's very important for us to, to exchange some ideas because we are in the same area. So it's, I thank you one more time for your time and for your patience and for everything. And good luck with all your projects, and we keep in touch.
Yes.
Regarding everything, even the article that I was telling you about earlier. So yeah, thank you one more time for joining this meeting, and yeah, we keep in touch.
Yeah, it was a pleasure being here. Thank you guys all for coming out and watching me. I hope everyone enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you all again soon, sometime in person.
We are inviting you again in this residency, and even if it's a young residency program, we are struggling to improve it. And we would really be happy to have you again with us. So who knows, maybe next year.
Who knows?
Again. Yeah, okay. We will talk.
All right.
Have a nice day.
All right.
Bye
Bye.
Good luck. Bye.